Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brendan Hayden McCarthy, and today I will be giving you my AP research presentation on the boys youth soccer and the pay-to-play system. So, first of all, here's my table of contents. I'll start off with my methodology, which is not the usual, but then I'll go into my introduction, my findings. I have like 4 or 5, literary review, and then finally my conclusion and my solutions. So my methodology. So I didn't actually, unlike my peers, I didn't, do my own research or whatever. I actually used quantitative research to, I took an objective stance on the issue at hand, and I took research from other people, and I kind of formulated my own opinion on that, right? So I said that there, and I used data and information gathered from prior researchers and trusted sources to connect ideas to the pay-to-play system. So my introduction. The world has progressed exponentially in recent decades with the new innovation with like iPhones, electric vehicles, and life-saving medicines. But the youth soccer system in the U.S. requires a huge change, huge revamp. And the change really needs to stem from the realization that there's an issue at hand, and there needs to be an initiative to change that. So the pay-to-play system lacks the ability to pull from the full potential of the U.S. player pool for a multitude of reasons. The U.S. soccer system has regressed in the last few decades, unlike other things, with the separation of different leagues. So there used to be a kind of a cumulative league, right? But now it's kind of separated into MLS Next and EDP and ECNL. I'll get more into that later. But youth soccer has become more of a business rather than a developmental tool for U.S. players. So businessmen and stuff like that, they're more focused on their profit rather than actually developing kids and making sure that the U.S. soccer system is more advanced. So my topic question specifically was, how does the pay-to-play system affect U.S. youth boys soccer? Right, so why did I choose this? I've been in and around soccer my entire life. My dad's from Ireland. I grew up with soccer. It was kind of forced upon me, but I love it. I love soccer. I love everything about it. And I personally participated in the U.S. youth soccer system since I was maybe 5 years old, right? So a lot of years, right? And I've noticed many problems with the systems that not only my peers who were less financially, endowed, and they've had problems with that, and there's many other reasons that I'll get into. But I realized that there's a problem, and now I'm trying to find a solution for it, right? And I'm bringing that to you guys. So there are issues. Now what these issues are is, first, the financial burden that this has on parents and kids alike, right? So there are 4 main things of the cost. There's the initial cost or fee required from the club to induct their child, which is the club fee. So I play for PDA, which is a Player Development Academy in Somerset, and the initial cost is like $2-3 grand, right, which is about average for everyone, right? So that's the fee that I have to pay, that's set in stone, can't change that, right? Then you have your attire, right? So everyone pays an attire fee. You have your home jerseys, your away jerseys. So you have your jerseys, your cleats, your socks, backpacks, shin guards, shorts, and generally you have harsh weather apparel, such as like Under Armour, and it, according to regulation, it has to match your jersey color, so you have to get different ones for your home jersey, your away jersey. If you're in the weather, I'm sure you want gloves, you want stuff like that, so those are extra fees on top of that. Then you have your travel costs, which would be flights, gas, and Ubers in very extreme cases. And yes, I have seen it happen where one of my friends Ubered to practice for about half a year because he didn't have his car. So, but flights and gas, huge cost on parents and kids. And private coaching. You're probably saying, why am I paying for private coaching if I'm already paying for a club, right? But if you want to make it to that next level, that collegiate level, or that Division I, that professional level, you really need to be ahead of the game. So everyone's in clubs nowadays, but there's things such as AP2T, which one of my coaches runs, and there's the Performance Center in Hillsborough, and these are all extra fees that kids and parents pay. So the average youth soccer player pays up to $9,500. Now, they're not every single player is paying $9,500, and that all depends on the year. Like last year I went to Florida, so I paid about $4,000 out of pocket, so I probably paid around $12,000 overall last year, but this year it's a lot less because I'm already committed, and I don't really need to go on these many like trips and stuff like that, so it's a lot less, but it does all add up, and the general number is $9,500. Right? So another problem that there is the mental effects that this has on kids. Right? So you have your practice stresses, right? So 2 to 3 teams practice together at each age group, and I play at multiple different clubs. So say I'm a U19 player, right? I have 2 to 3 groups of teams playing at the U19 level, competing for different spots, right? So this can and does take a toll on children when you're not selected for games and stuff like that. And I've had friends talk to me personally as a leader of the team and say like, hey man, I'm trying my best, I don't know what I should do here. And it really gets them mentally and affects the way that they play. And then you have your game stresses, which start before you even get to the game, right? Say it's a far drive to like Virginia or something like that. You have to prepare for that. You have to wake up early. You have to drive there, and it's all brewing inside you as you're there, and you got to get your stuff together. And then you could be driving all that way to blow out a team 7-0 or something like that, and it's all for nothing. I mean, the competition standard isn't always there. So then this brings me back to my financial burden as well. So this does not only affect the parents, but it also affects the kids playing. So the knowledge of the extremities that parents go through can cause unplanned anxiety for children and affect their performances. So what this means is, with the knowledge that your parents are paying so much out of pocket, and like knowing that it matters so much to them that you are successful, it takes a toll on your mental state. You know what I mean? You're like, I have to do good. And in thinking that I have to do good, I have to do this, I have to do good on this presentation, it can cause you to stutter, to stumble, you know what I mean? It can cause you to not play your best, right? And actually, especially with children with anxiety, which according to the National Institute of Mental Health, is 20 to 30% of children between the ages of 13 and 18. So that's a large number of kids. Right, then this brings me into the number of leagues that there actually is now with the changes. So this is the MLS Next, that's the EVP, right? So I'll go into that. So this is gonna sound like gibberish to you guys, and it looks like just a bunch of letters and stuff, but I'll go through them. You have your MLS Next, which is generally regarded as the highest league. Your ECNL, ECRL, those two sound similar, they are related. NAL, EVP, NPL, AYSO, CSL, AYSO is in California, and continue, and counting. So this is just the ones that I know personally, and the ones that I've done research on about, right? So with the large number of leagues around the country, it begs the question, what is the clear player pathway, right? So what is the pathway that kids want to be on to be at the highest level? Right, so this is generally regarded as the hierarchy or the power scaling of the U.S. youth soccer system, with MLS Next being at the top, ECNL, EA, NAL, and it kind of goes down and down, right down to EVP. However, this is not necessarily true. So the majority of these leagues are not related in any way. So you have your ECNL and ECRL, which are clear, one is above the other. However, MLS Next and ECNL are not related in any way. Right? So you can have a team that has an ECNL team as their top team and a team that has their MLS Next team as their top team. And the only time they ever play is in tournament games. And in tournament games, there's been shown to have ECNL teams have beat MLS teams, and even NAL teams have beat ECNL teams. Now, does that mean that NAL is the top league? I don't know. Nobody knows. This is just kind of the general, this isn't anything official, this is just the general what people think. So that brings me to, more on pathway. So disagreements of the true hierarchy of teams leaves top players confused on where to play. So if you're a really great player and you want to play for a team and you don't know what that best team is, then it can change like the outcome of your whatever, right? So it lets players focus on other factors that outweigh the competitiveness of the actual team, and furthermore slow or halt their development for many young talents, right? So restrictions and limitations. So you're probably saying, what restrictions are there? And I'm not talking about referees. I'm talking about high school soccer specifically. That is one reason why our high school, Windsor Township High School, isn't the best high school, because a lot of players play MLS Next in our school, and they're not necessarily allowed to play high school. So they're not allowed to play high school if they play MLS Next, right? So this begs the question, should I play ECNL instead? Should I play something else? So there's no actual clear player pathway, and the pay-to-play system kind of changes that and makes kids focus on more on other things. So, and then top academies make you go to separate schools, right? So for an example, Philadelphia Union, I went there a couple of weeks ago, played against them. They have their own separate schooling system. So what that means is they have, instead of going to North Windsor Township, if I played for Philly Union, I would go to the Philadelphia Union school. This affects kids because they're more focused on athleticism than they are focused on studies. So they're not student athletes, they're athlete students at that point. Because then if they're not focusing on their soccer, then they get kicked out of the school and they have to go back to their old school. So it's not just about academics, it's also about athleticism at that point, right? So my fourth reason is international success. So we've not been very successful internationally. We have, unlike the women's team, the men's team has 0 World Cups, and we're not very successful internationally, and only 4 US players play in the top league in Europe, the English Premier League, compared to actually 16 Argentinians who are the reigning World Cup champions. So you're probably wondering, that begs the question, why are we so good at other sports but not boys soccer, right? I believe that this is down to the system that is in place, and it's easy to miss talent and deter talent. So the pay-to-play system kind of forces kids to focus more on paying for stuff, and it kind of focuses them, it detours their stuff to the point where, you know, they don't excel to that top level that other countries have, because other countries have different set systems where it's less money for them and stuff. So my literary review, right? So the pay-to-play system in the U.S. is ineffective, right? Finances put an unneeded burden on families and players. Trusted sources note the shortcomings of U.S. men's soccer domestically and internationally. So what that specifically means is that a lot of the sources that I found were noting that like other countries have good points and have good, it's easier for kids with lower income to access facilities and stuff like higher facilities. And just because you're more economically inclined does not mean that you're going to be a better soccer player. You know what I mean? So it gives those lower opportunity kids a chance to excel, like the higher opportunity kids, right? So on the contrary, many sources state how successful it is elsewhere. So exactly what I just said. And research shows the plethora of leagues blurs the player pathway. So what that means is, like I said before, the player pathway, it's not really, you don't know what's the top league, you don't know what's the bottom one. You know, you kind of just go to where you think is best, right? And the U.S. pay-to-play system at the youth level needs to adapt and change to fit those less fortunate. So my findings / my solution, I would find this more so my solution. I think that we should combine leagues into one cohesive league with clear levels. So that's what used to happen before, but I believe that we should reinstate that and have, say, if you want MLS Next at the top, ECNL at the second, and at the third. This would also help us to lower costs through fundraising efforts, because a lot of these leagues, they're competing against each other, so the fundraising is kind of dispersed. So if I'm fundraising for this league, it kind of hurts this league, you know, whereas if I'm fundraising for this league, it hurts this league. So if we all come together, then all that money is productive instead of just being thrown in opposite directions. This will also force academies to allow high school, I would also want to force academies to allow high school players to participate for their own schools, because it brings a sense of community back to the community, and it allows kids to, like, you know, hang out and play with the kids that they played their whole life. And I played 4 years of high school, and I had the opportunity not to, but I loved it. I loved it so much. And I would like to reduce the stress on players by instituting less polluted practices. So instead of having 1 or 2 trainers for 2 or 3 teams at each practice, and I would want to decrease that and kind of have one team, one coach, you know what I mean? And so that they don't feel like they're not as good as the other guys around them, or that their development is slow, especially at a younger age, because you have a lot of kids still growing at that age. And I would also want them to be able to have access to trusted adults willing to talk through issues. At PDA specifically, I know for sure that if I needed to talk to anyone, I could talk to them. I have a great relationship with the coaches. I know that they do a great job over there, but I've talked to some of my friends at other clubs that I won't name, that they feel as though that there's a lot of stress on them and they have no real outlet to go to. And I feel like that's a huge thing that needs to be put in place. So these are my sources.
Okay. What was one obstacle or challenge you encountered while implementing your research method, and how did you address it?
So one main problem that I had while, addressing my research was I did not want to bash my club at all, PDA specifically, because I feel that they helped me so much in my recruitment process. And I've been there for 2 years now. And I thought that they've helped me with so much. And a lot of the things here, they're not really money hungry. They're not really all of these things. They're kind of just more so a victim of it. You know what I mean? And I thought that I wanted to not be able to bash my team, but also relay to you guys the problems that there is. And I thought that I did a decent job of that, but I thought that was, my hardest issue that I had.
Thank you.
So I have a question based on one of your slides where you mentioned the impact of the women's team on the international stage versus the men's team, right?
Yeah.
And I know the women's landscape wasn't the focus of your research, but I'm curious for you to share with us an introduction maybe to the difference in the setting that might lead to the change in outcome that you reported.
So it's actually a perfect question because I really wanted to do the women's thing, but I'm a men's player, so I know so much more about that system. But I know for sure PDA specifically, because I keep saying that, but the club I play specifically, the women's group is one of the best in the nation, right? So I have a lot of friends that play on that team, and it's really good. And I think that the reason why they're so successful is because there's more of an attraction to that for the girls. I don't know what reason that is, if it's systematically, if it's whatever, but I just understand that a lot of the boys, it's like we're not really good at soccer, so why would I want to play soccer? I only played soccer because I had a father that was an immigrant, you know what I mean? But a lot of these girls were so good at soccer, you want to be the best, you want to play with the best, you know what I mean? And the girls are so good at soccer that, why wouldn't you want to play soccer as a young girl? And then that makes the teams get better and better because there's so many girls playing soccer, and then whereas boys kind of go to football or something else or stuff like that. You know what I mean? So.
Which of your sources was the most influential, and in what way is that influence apparent in your final conclusion?
So I thought that the source that was the most valuable to me was the U.S. Youth Soccer program specifically, because they actually, I use them for a lot of my stuff, like with the league specifically and the hierarchy charts, and that wasn't from them, but I use them a lot for like all this league stuff and like getting information on rulings and stuff like that, of whether you're allowed to play high school and more specific stuff like that, so they help me a lot with that. So.
Any other questions at all?
I have one question. Is in PDA, as far as you know, does the women's league or the girls' league have a different price menu than the male league?
So I'm not sure about that, but I do know that the leagues themselves are different. So like girls don't have a MLS Next group. Their highest level would be ECNL, so that is very clear that the ECNL
Okay, so their
level
pathway is clearer.
Their pathway is way more
Okay,
clear.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem.